Michelle here, personal trainer and lifestyle coach. Today we are here joined by Floyd Carbins. He has a variety of experience in the health and fitness industry, and so I have him here today to talk a little bit more about what he's done and how he's helped other people. Welcome, Floyd.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Good, good. Thank you so much for being here. I would love to hear a little bit about your journey. I know that you've kind of put your hand in lots of different types of health and fitness. So can you tell us a little bit about some stuff that you have done?
Okay. Well, I'm currently working with the Department of Veterans Affairs, but I got my start really in the military. I mean, when I first joined, oh my God, I could not run a mile to save my life. But, but as you get conditioned in basic training, you really get over the mental humps that really puts you in a it puts you in a better position. So that way, when you come up to obstacles, you can say, you know what, let me give it a little bit more. I can get over that obstacle. So that's basically where I got my start. But eventually, when I transitioned out of the military, I started working for a company called NeoVita Foot Comfort Center. They specialize in custom fit orthotics. I started working there, and unfortunately, my brother got hurt in the military. He had an accident where his pelvis was crushed between a concrete barrier and a flatbed truck. So that put him in a position where he couldn't really walk. I mean, he stayed at Walter Reed Medical Center in the bed, I want to say for about 3 months. They had a full reconstruction of the pelvis. His urethra was split. There was a multitude of different therapies that needed to take place for him to get into a walking state. So seeing that being a part of the rehabilitation with him, oh man, when I came back from that, I kind of hit the ground running and wanted to get my certification with building orthotics and learning a little bit more about prosthetics and learning about the body and how it functions. So that's kind of where I got my jump in health and wellness. And it pretty much evolved from there.
That's awesome. So did you get to work with him in a physical therapy aspect, or did you just get to kind of see that, and did that inspire you?
Honestly, at that time, I mean, you're dealing with the war that was going on. There's a lot of soldiers coming back, and medical staff, even at that time, was pretty strained. So they provided services for family members to come there and stay and hands-on help with the rehabilitation process. So you're helping support your family member through their training. You're learning things that you can take home so that way they can continue building and strengthening, and you know what to do when they're in a distress situation. I would like to say everybody's road to recovery is a smooth one, but it's not. It really, you're gonna run into some things that are is going to slow the process down or may make you question what you're doing, but you got to push through and keep working at it. And so seeing that, man, these soldiers, they came back from some terrible stuff and they were able to push through it. Why could we?
I love that. Did you happen to have any personal experience with physical therapy? Had you had any injuries or anything like that?
I absolutely did. I injured my foot during basic training, but at that time when I went in when I was 17, so I was invincible, man. It's a little injury, you kind of shake it off. But man, over the years, you do a lot of repetitive movements, and these things, it's wear and tear, and we don't realize it when we're young because you're young, you're strong, and you're in the moment. But after going through things like air assault school and running, you're pounding on concrete, man. Between my foot, my knee, my back, it starts to travel up. So keeping yourself in a fit state, paying attention to your nutrition, those things help with longevity. So I watch it, but yeah, I have a lot of service connected disabilities, no doubt
Oh,
about that.
Can we go off on a small tangent there and talk a little bit
Yes.
more about some things that you can do to help maybe prevent some of these injuries?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we, I myself I keep in mind what I'm doing. In my personal routine, I do about 30 minutes cardio in the morning, then do a little bit of resistance training. I have to be mindful of the injuries that I currently have in place, be sure not to overdo things, but also keep in mind that I have a focal point on strengthening and keeping my range of motion intact. Again, I'm 42. So I keep myself in a mindset of what my capabilities are. I have goals, but I know what I can do. So you always got to keep that in mind. You want building stages and you want slow progressions because we automatically want it, man. I want to go to the gym for 7 days, get that six pack abs so I can start showing it off. That's not how it works. It is slow, progressive, and you're going to achieve those goals, but you have to keep your abilities in mind and make sure that you don't injure yourself by doing too much too fast. And that is one of the major things. I see it all the time, and especially with injuries, people want to get back to that state where, hey, I'm healthy again, I can go run with my kids, I can do all of these things, but you got to take it slow and remember that you want the longevity in that health and make sure that the injury stays in a good state.
So there's almost an aspect of preservation there, right?
Oh, absolutely. Overall, man, I have kids. I want to be able to move about just like they're moving, no matter my age. So it is about preserving that body.
Okay, very cool. Thank you. So then let's talk what happened after you worked in NeoVita. Is that what you said it was?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
NeoVita.
All right.
So I actually transitioned to working with Accident Injury Chiropractic. So there I learned about, hey, what aligning the system can really do. You got better communication between the brain and the nerve endings. So when you have an aligned spine, your muscular system works better. There's better function, and strengthening the core. I mean, I learned about how what we do and how we maintain our body affects us when it comes down to healing injuries. So there was a lot of learning. But there is where I got my certification with the National Academy of Sports Medicine for corrective exercise. And I got to apply it a lot. I loved it. 9 years.
That's awesome. So this definitely sounds more than just a chiropractic clinic. Can you tell me a little bit more about the process that you guys have?
So yeah, we had a very unique process. So patient comes in, they worked on corrective exercise before the adjustment. So with that said, you get to loosen up these muscles, you get less resistance on the ligaments and tendons. So when you get that final adjustment, which is the full, that's what you come from, the mill. That's the meat of it. He has less resistance. The patient has a more relaxed body, so they get the biggest benefit of the adjustment. So we did that right before every time.
So I've heard of people doing something similar with massage. Where would you compare the corrective exercise therapy versus massage and how that works?
So there's phases in corrective exercise. So when we initially get a patient, we're gonna go into the first page. We're gonna start inhibiting. So that's where you actually get to work on those overactive muscles through things like myofascial release. You're bringing out that foam roller. You're digging in. You're breaking up that fascia. You're making sure that you can actually move and extend those muscles when it's that time, depending on the injury. Now, I want to say there's a time and a place for full blown massage. But when it comes down to injuries, you want to be careful with that kind of thing because you don't know the responses. And when we were getting in patients, they weren't, in the first couple of days, you don't know how affected you really and truly are. After a little bit of shock wears off, 3 days in, then you're really feeling it. So we're pretty careful with that. So after that inhibitory phase, then we're going into a lengthening phase. That's where we're actually getting a full extent of that muscle. We're starting to work on range of motion. We're going to open things up a little bit more. We're going to make sure that there's better nerve communication. Okay, so these are going hand in hand to make sure those vertebrae are aligned. And that's where the adjustments, man, they really hit home. Okay, so in that third phase, that's where we start activation. You know what it's time to do? Strengthen. We're going to start working on those muscle tissues. And we're going to start pulling things together. We're going to make sure that we can actually get some hold around the injury area. So that way they're supported. They're working on core strength. So that way the full spine is supported. And then lastly, it's full integration, man. We're working on some synergy. We're testing balance. Man, you flip that bozu off. Hey, let's do some ball throws. We're making sure that everything is really coming together. So it was a very intense process, a lot different from physical therapy where you're just working on muscular strength. So we had a lot of things involved with the process.
I love that. It sounds very thorough.
Well, people were expecting to get healed, and that's what we were attempting to do. So I love doing it.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about the timeline here? Like, I know it might be different for each person, but generally speaking, what would each of those phases look like?
So, that was the fun part because again, this is all chiropractic based. So you're gonna come in, the chiropractor is gonna have some type of treatment plan in play. Now, when you're first in the injury, in the kind of acute stages, they're seeing the doc at least 2 to 3 times a week. So before those sessions, we're working with them for at least 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how much they can handle. And then there's a tapered down situation. But that's where they're going home with exercises to make sure that they can actually maintain in between the adjusting and keep the flow going, because we don't want to relax. People think, hey, injured, I'm stopping. I'm not going to move. But that's the exact opposite of what you want to do. You want to keep things moving. You want to attack, but within reason. Okay, you want to go to the line, kind of dabble with it, but back it off from there. So it was you had a juggling act. Now we treat it back differently, shoulder injuries different, neck injuries different. So you're typically working 2 to 3 times a week. You're breaking it down over a course of months, but it really depends on the severity of the injury.
And did you see pretty good results in terms of recovery for most people?
Absolutely. I definitely saw a difference between those who participated in the rehabilitation program and the ones that did not. The healing was faster. They had less resistance. And at the end of the day, they got out and were back to their normal daily activities, which is the ultimate goal.
Awesome. And this is always a question for anyone in therapy. How do you get people to do the stuff outside of your sessions?
Well, you kind of got to make it fun while you're working with them. You gotta practice what you preach. I was in there doing some motions with them. If I'm not comfortable doing it, they're not going to be comfortable doing it. If I'm not excited about doing it, they're not going to be excited about doing it. You have to make it fun, or at least interesting at the very minimum. So, but you can tell, you're a trainer, you can tell who's going to really do what they say their goals are. And there's going to be the ones that are going to fall off. But as long as you give them all the materials and all of the guidance that they're needing, I think at the end of the day, we did our job.
Okay. And did you feel like your certification for corrective exercise covered everything that you needed to know, or were you still kind of learning on that?
It was the platform that I needed, and trust me, it was a very thorough program.
Okay.
I absolutely loved it. But as a whole, I learned stuff from PTs. I learned things from chiropractors. I've learned things from massage therapists. It was a collaborative effort. So the education never stopped. You always continue to educate yourself. So you got to stretch into other avenues. And that's exactly what happened naturally.
And how did you learn from, did you have other people in the clinic that were massage therapists or PTs, or how did you learn from
Oh,
that?
absolutely. So, I mean, you have groups that they refer out to each other because, at the end of the day, if I cannot help you or I see that you can benefit from additional services,
Mm.
dude, we're taking that route. Yes, we have massage therapy in-house in our clinic, but we also refer to physical therapy. So you may be working with a corrective exercise specialist and a physical therapist to attack that goal. So yeah, we all work together, which was awesome.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between those two, a PT and a corrective exercise therapist?
So with PT, again, you're focusing pretty much muscularly on the scenario. Corrective exercise is it's always ancillary focused. So, and I say ancillary because it's secondary to chiropractic adjustment.
Okay.
So if you can imagine, it's not as long as PT. It's not going to be full focus on shrinking. Now, absolutely, PT does do inhibiting. They take a multitude of different things, but at the end of the day, my goal was to make sure I had less restriction for that doctor to do his job, and also found the dysfunction in the muscles before he got to it, and that at the end of the day helped them along and helped the patients get to their healing.
Okay.
So
Can we talk a little bit more about identifying dysfunctions? How did you know? How did you test for that?
So you have to get into range of motion testing initially. Now the good thing was, you're going to have an evaluation with the chiropractor. So I take a look at. I'm right there with him. I'm taking a look at the motions that you cannot do and which you cannot and which you can do. So from there, okay, we're going down to the rehab room and we're going to take a look at what muscles they where's the tension, where do we need to lengthen, which are now overworked that we need to slow down. That was a fun process. I don't want to give it all away because you need to go ahead and get that certification. It is a great book on that one, but the testing in general was our gateway to figuring out how to get to where our roadmap was going to be.
Okay, very cool. And do you feel like you could identify that on anyone essentially, even if they weren't in an injury?
You know what? Over time, you notice you can pick up on stances, you can pick up on someone's gait. You can see a drop in the foot. You can see a little bit of a sway in the shoulders. You can see a rounding, little upper cross or a little lordosis in the back. So over time, these things are so easy. It's like, oh man, we need to get to those lats. Like, hey, let's go ahead and start pulling a little bit back on the scaps, get that chest pushed out, work on the stance overall. So it gets easier over time. And you can just simply look at someone and just like, I know exactly what we're working on.
Okay. So I like that you guys actually watched people move because it seems like in a general chiropractic setting, you're lying on a table, right? Like, yes, they can kind of look at you and see things, they move you around a little bit, but movement itself, I feel like tells a whole nother story, right?
It absolutely does. That was the reason why we had that long hallway. We can actually see how the hips are moving and where the dependence is. So there's a lot of different aspects that are very small, but you can get a lot of information. And my job in at NeoVita Foot Comfort Center was to get impressions of feet
Mhm.
in a static or dynamic state. So when you're in motion, your strike or where the pressure of the foot is going to land is in two different patterns. And you want to be able to determine, hey, where are the imbalances in both and see if you can actually bridge the gap.
Okay. So I didn't actually think we were going to go back to the orthotics, but I'm actually curious to ask you a couple of questions about that too. I've gone through the process at, Roadrunner or something like that, where they have you walk on a treadmill and they look at your gait and all those types of
Yeah.
things. So I know a lot of people, as you've mentioned, you had a foot injury, then that worked
Mhm.
its way up to the knee and then the hip, right? So how does foot health in general affect the other parts of your body?
Oh, we have kinetic chain. So honestly, you imagine, so you have a pronating ankle. I mean, now you're pretty much thrown off at that point. We have knee misalignment, we have hip misalignment. So now you're carrying your weight a little bit tilted, shoulders are off, we're up to the neck now. So it really matters. So if you have stability down low, at the very minimum where the imbalances are, at least they're staying there. So we actually built orthotics in chiropractic settings as well. So it it somehow came together in my career. I've never not used every part that I've made. So believe it or not, chiropractors can actually issue orthotics,
That's
and
cool.
that continues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
again, they look at the skeletal system from bottom to top. And it's the best way to look at it.
Okay. Are there ever situations where you look top to bottom, say that you do have like scoliosis or something like that?
Even with that, you have to evaluate where how are they stable down low. With scoliosis, you have a slight shifting of the spine, but if you're in a posterior view, it's either left or right and not anterior posterior, so it's a little bit different with that one. So I would always look at the bottom, but if we're in a car accident, man, and you're coming in like this, we're going to top first.
Hmm. Now, when you worked with necks, because that's obviously necks and spines, right, are a little bit, I don't know if scary is the word, but
It
they're
is.
they're very sensitive, right? Obviously, you have a spinal cord in there. So when you worked with necks and spines, were there specific protocol that you had to take, or any specific, types of exercises that you really recommended in order to help get that back in alignment without stressing it out?
Absolutely. So we were working under direct supervisor of the doctor, so that was always that comfort level we had. But just like any other area of concern, you want to have a careful approach. So traction of that area was some of the best things to start out with, and we had a manual traction where the patient can actually use their body weight to give that decompression of that area.
Mhm.
So that was something we started out with, but simply using a very light, I'd say a smaller version of it, like a stability ball, about 12 inches. We have them move that, put that on the forehead, touching the wall, and go through range of motion exercises, flexion and extension. Okay.
Okay.
We go for a little bit of the lateral motions, a little bit of rotations. So we go through those, and definitely coming out to the sides. So you actually get a little bit of motion without overdoing it.
Mhm.
And then of course we build up to more resistance on a weight neck version.
Okay.
So
Definitely. And I keep hearing you mention range of motion. We both know that that's really important. Can you talk a little bit more about why that's important?
well, it's important. I mean, overall, I kind of preach longevity. If you want good joint health, range of motion is going to be key, but you got to hold things together. That's why stretching is super important. I would say most of our patients that came in with low back injuries could not reach their knees, let alone bend down to reach their toes in a hamstring stretch. So, lack of range of motion has already put the imbalances in place. You have muscles that are way too tight and some that need to be stretched so bad. So, range of motion is going to be key to overall muscular health at the end of the day,
Okay.
and also
And
save that joint.
so, besides tissue release, what were some tactics that you used to help with stretching and range of motion?
Well, I mean, we use a multitude of things, including resistance bands. So I am a big advocate of using resistance bands. I love calisthenic training, but I've pretty much use anything from a cane where you can push and extend out that shoulder. I am a resourceful individual, so I've definitely hooked up some things. But I've used stability balls a lot. We worked in a very limited area, so we had to work with very limited materials as well. But anything I can possibly get, but I primarily work with neck, back, and ankle injuries.
Okay.
So even using something like a balance board to increase range of motion with the ankle and get a little bit of stretch on the calf muscles, anything you can use.
Okay.
Doorway is one of my favorites for getting those pec muscles.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of my favorites right there. We go up top, we bring it down to the middle, and then we push it down to the bottom.
Awesome. And then for people that obviously some of the exercises that you're going to get them are body weight or light bands, right? Because you
Yeah,
can probably give them a TheraBand. Do you still suggest that people use more equipment if they have access to it in a gym?
absolutely. My goal was to start off the rehabilitation process, but at the end of the day, transition into a full fitness program. You got to keep this going. Hey, I'm going to give you some resources. We actually had discounted rates for signing up memberships with LA Fitness that was right next door. So yes, we were big push. You need to get yourself in a very fit state to maintain this health. So yeah, we definitely pushed for that.
Okay. Did you also have relationships with some of the trainers there to kind of pass people off or?
Absolutely. It definitely wasn't a pressurized situation, but we did have access to personal trainers that actually got our patients started with at least 7 sessions, and then pretty much transitioned into their normal programs for the gym.
Okay.
But again, those were focused again on their injuries, and then they would transition them into a full regular fitness program according to their goals.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about that transition. You're finishing up therapy, you're starting to get your range of motion back or your strength back, and then you're starting to go, let's say, to a gym. Doesn't necessarily matter if it's with a trainer. So what would that transition typically look like? How quickly are you going into a full-blown regular fitness program, or do you still need to do therapy for a few months on your own?
I think that is totally dependent on the injury.
Okay.
I luckily there was already a natural taper down system at play with the treatment program, so that was very beneficial in helping the patients with us being less involved and them being more involved in the treatment. So I was always pushing for them to start out with a lot lower weight, but really focus on opening up the range of motion. If you have limitations on the range of motion, zero weight until you can actually go full range and then start adding your resistance. So there were ways to taper up without going overboard. And I wanted to give them that mindset that, hey, it's that time. It's definitely that time.
Okay. Smart. I like that. Awesome. So then let's talk a little bit more about, just corrective exercise therapy, physical therapy. Do you feel like a lot of people are going the same direction that you guys were with integrated health? Do you think that's becoming more common?
It is. Honestly, most people want to do least invasive to more invasive, and it would be smart to work in that direction. To be honest, I don't want to be pumped full of pharmaceuticals. If I can get my health naturally, that's exactly how I want to do it. So just on the government side, we're seeing all of these services being combined because at the end of the day, it's the best outcome for the soldier and for any patient. So if you have these services integrated, these physicians are actually talking to each other. They can actually work better at healing you faster. That's an amazing thing. And these services were separate not too long ago, and they were fighting each other. Now they're all working together, and that's a beautiful thing.
Okay. How do you think that has been made possible? Because that's totally a thing that, we've been frustrated with the healthcare system for a long time. We have all these specialists, and obviously they need to be good at what they're good at, but you're not, a foot and
Mhm.
a hand, you're a full person, right?
Absolutely. There has to be open dialogue. And that's exactly what happened here. I was actually able to witness it. And when you have professionals that have different viewpoints, man, you can get so much more work done. I may miss something that you have eyes on, you may see. And, with that collaborative group, that's amazing. I eventually transitioned into government work, and I worked in physical medicine, and that involved OT, PT, and physiatry. And we had ancillary services like massage therapy, and acupuncture is involved in that as well.
Okay. Can you break some of those down a little bit more? What are some of the benefits of the different types of
So
therapy?
we definitely have a little bit of an idea of PT, but when you're getting into OT, now we're talking about therapy services that gets you back to the position you were in a working state. Okay, you're doing motions that you would while you're doing your job or daily activities, things that are more focused in that arena. Of course, in the government, we're working with soldiers, so we're getting them back to doing their job as a soldier. Now we have physiatry. Okay, physiatrists, they're the muscular doctor. They know everything about the neuromuscular system. And in our clinic, it was mostly injections. You have injections and you have needling. So you have some acupuncture involved. And we just had access to not only all of these physicians working together, but they were involved with the primary care provider as well. So the soldiers had access to all services at once, and they're all talking.
Okay, very cool. Now, not to get into the political part too much, but obviously a lot of this healthcare system is, also limited by insurance and those types of things. Are those therapies covered typically? In the military, I think there might be a little bit more leeway there, right?
There is a little bit more leeway in the military. Now, on the insurance side, there are a lot of roadblocks and some red tape. Okay. I would always suggest contacting your insurance provider, see what benefits you do have. I've seen a very large growth in activity for chiropractic and massage therapy services. Now, depending on your insurance carrier, is going to be whether, hey, I need to see my PCP first for a referral to those providers. But they're being added all the time. On the VA side, we are definitely extending those services out, and we are bringing in community providers into our network so that way they can have access to those services, because we've got a lot of veterans that do need it.
That's very cool. Okay, awesome. Do you see any other patterns in, just physical therapy or corrective exercise that are kind of happening over the last few years?
I mean, honestly, fitness in general has had a lot more visibility. Man, it's really evolved. And you have situations where um, people are sharing more content, just like what you're doing. Like we're putting a light on what we have done, what we can do, even in limited spaces. Man, COVID changed the game on fitness as a whole. I was heartbroken when my gym shut down, absolutely heartbroken. And just to try to get back in or get in the mindset, well, I got to do this at home now. I got to really involve. But man, you have avenues like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. You get some really good suggestions, and it's a community now. But that's what fitness is. Man, you got a brotherhood or a sisterhood or a great group of individuals that are like-minded and have a focus on health and wellness in general. And I do see that evolution that, hey, it's getting fresher. People are bringing new things to the table, new inventions. God, I've seen a lot of cool stuff out there. And I ain't gonna lie, I've even tried the Baby Shark app workout. Don't hold out against me.
I cannot listen to that song because it will literally be stuck in my head for like 2 hours.
Oh my God, you gotta at least try it. Try it.
Sounds good. So then I guess with all of this content, how do you know what information is good and what information is just kind of novelty? Or are people making stuff up because they actually have a good idea, or are they just making stuff up because they want something new?
Look, I'm gonna say you gotta be smart, man. You got to be smart. You can look at somebody and be like, man, you are going to hurt yourself. Okay. I see it a lot. I see it in the gym. It makes me cringe sometimes. There's a lot of novelty content out there. Guys, you just got to pay attention and refer, man. Go to the, American College of Sports Medicine Journal or somewhere where there's legitimate knowledge on the content. Now, there's some cool things even I want to try, but you just got to be careful. You got to be protective of this body because this one is all we got, man. We got to be careful.
And I think about this often, how complicated something like exercise can really be, especially doing it correctly, right? So, how do you have just any person off the street? How do you suggest that they get good at moving and moving correctly, especially in like a gym setting?
So I always suggest do a little research, but start with, hey, what's my goal? But like ultimately, do I want to get stronger? Do I want to lose weight? Do I want to get faster? I want better performance. I want to do my job better. So I want to focus on those types of movements. Let's start with your goals first. And then I got to figure out how I'm getting there. Now, if I'm going for a straight, like, hey, I want to lose some weight. Hey, how sedentary am I right now? And how carefully I can build myself up into a state where I'm actually maybe doing a light jog or running. And how can I do it with as less impact on the body and less shock? I'm a slow and steady individual, and that's not everyone's approach. But I always say, do some research, man. Pull up some of these medical journals. Pull up some good fitness books. I know everyone's not a proponent of it, but Starting Strength, I love it. That's one of my favorite books. Mark Ripito hits home. It's an intense read. There's a lot of material in the book, but I love to research. So I would say do a little research, figure out your goals, man. You can do it, and slow and steady does win the race. It
Yeah.
does.
And now there's a ton of YouTube videos. Even Marco Pito has made a YouTube channel, The Art of Manliness, I think, right? So sometimes it's a little more easily digestible for people, but yeah, there's a lot of good information out there.
Absolutely. I see different names for exercises I may know. Man, I hit Google, hit YouTube, like, oh, okay, I know it. It's just different terminology. But YouTube is an awesome source for that. But you can also do a comparison, man. You can take two videos, put them side by side, man. See how those motions are working for both individuals. Again, be smart about it, evaluate it, and see what's going to work for you and what's not, and adapt the exercise to yourself. If you got to do some modifications, do that until you're able to go full blown. That's okay. That is okay. We do it all the time.
And I hear two common themes here. So if we could address those really quick, the slow and steady
Yeah.
approach. So if you can talk about how, why you think that's important versus what other people might do as a different approach. And then the secondary to that is individualism. Individualism, yes, being able to make an exercise work for you, right?
Yes. So slow and steady is going to keep you out of the danger zone. Okay. There is going to be delays in how muscles are going to react to the actions that you're doing. So slow and steady is definitely going to keep you from getting into a position where you're injuring yourself. It is going to keep you out of that zone. I would hate for anyone to want to rush the process because time is going to get you your results. You have to be persistent. This is why only few of us achieve these goals because we can't rush the process, man. It is slow and steady. And you can start gauging things after your body has developed to a state where you can start pushing the limits a little bit better. But I would say keep yourself in a position where you're in control and things are not taking over. Now, with keeping everything really individualized, you really have to gauge, hey, what am I doing? And can I make this my own? Because at the end of the day, this is my body. How am I applying it to me? And am I going to enjoy what I'm doing with that? Because any exercise, you can take it, you can look at someone doing it, feel like, hey, I need to do the same thing. But no, there's things that I don't feel like I need to be doing. So it can be suggested, but it is what it is. So I think with everything, you gotta really hone in on your goal, make it your own, focus on filling the gaps. But again, do it slowly. Get into that mindset of, hey, I have no rush. This is not a diet. It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. You want health, you want wellness. So there's no rush for it.
Okay, love that. So obviously, you and I, being proponents of fitness, would love for people to lift and do cardio and those types of formal training. But what would you say to the people that don't want to do those things, but they'd rather hike or play a sport? What do you think about that?
With that, my brother is a huge hike fanatic. If you're getting out there, dude, that's some serious cardio. Some of those hikes can kick my butt. So do what's fun. When I don't want to lift, but I want an arm workout, I'm breaking out my kayak. I'm gonna get out there on the river or the lake, and I'm gonna roll my butt off. There's so much you can do. The thing is, don't get stagnant. Don't sit there. As soon as you stop moving, you get old. Don't get old too fast. You gotta keep moving. Man, these bodies are they're meant to stay in motion. So we got to utilize whatever resources we have. I just recently picked up a bike. I'm starting a bike now. I'm working on that part. So it's just a different avenue, but it's challenges my body hasn't had, and it's fresh and it's new and it's exciting.
Love that. So, what would you encourage for people that are either starting to age or are in a little bit, higher range in terms of years? Are some things that you would suggest to them to keep it fresh and to keep moving as much as possible?
Oh my God, there's a lot of programs out there. I think Silver Sneakers is still rocking out there as well. But aquatic fitness is another. Man, I didn't know you can sweat underwater, but you can. You can definitely sweat underwater. So there are a lot of programs that are really low impact on the joints, but you can still keep moving. I always suggest, hey, go to your local Y. Go to any local fitness place that may have some programs going on. Man, there's a lot of resources out there. I know with USAA, they actually have programs where you can actually have access to multitude of different gyms for very low fees. And man, there's programs associated with these memberships. Let's say take advantage. But for the older communities, please be careful. Make sure that you have appropriate instructors that are certified for your age groups that can really give you the content that you need at the pace that you need it. That's very important. So just want to put that out there.
Yeah, no, I love that. Awesome. Okay, cool. So, one thing that you did a little bit more recently, I guess a few years ago now, is you went back to school. So, can you tell me about why you went back to school and kind of what you studied, what you learned?
Well, I was studying healthcare administration. I am in a supervisory position now with the Department of Veterans Affairs. I've definitely been in the healthcare sector for a very long time, and there were a lot of things that I did not know about running a healthcare facility. Right now, I'm still scratching the surface, and as we spoke earlier, I filled in the role for the program analyst this past week. The, it's a it's a very intense environment. It can be very intimidating. There's a lot to know information wise, but everything's database, man. It's all numbers. So to be able to interpret that type of information, you got to continue to educate yourself, and you're never too old, man. So at any point, hey, man, let's go ahead and get in there, and that's exactly what I did. So I wanted to make sure that I was at the capacity that I can be at in order to support our veterans because they really need that support. And I'm bringing something a little bit fresher to the VA.
Okay, okay. Do we get a preview or is that on the DL right now?
That is That's a little preview. I'm going to
Okay,
make
okay.
my impact. Definitely going to make my impact.
Okay, very cool. Now, were you already in your position when you started going to school?
I was not actually. I gained a lot of knowledge while I was in school, and I was able to obtain my position just and climbing that ladder. I applied things over time and learned a lot about the processes. But leaving the DoD, going over to the VA, I had a different focus in mind, and that focus was definitely expanding what we can do care wise for individuals that don't know they have this care available. And taking that approach has put me in a position I'm at right now. So
Okay.
I'm enjoying it. I love it.
And people that don't know that this is available, do you mean a little bit more like marketing and advertising or?
We are definitely going to have more of an outreach program set up. So that way we can actually start educating more veterans and giving them more resources to obtain appointments, to get to the care they need, counseling, things of that nature. But expanding the network of providers that we have is also an important thing.
Okay, very cool. And that's probably something that can be common with even not just the VA, but being able to give resources to a larger population, right? A larger audience.
Absolutely, putting the exposure on the situation, the lack of education, man. It is definitely something that I want to do. Man, there's a lot of veterans that don't realize that they have a lot of services available to them, and just doesn't they don't know how to capitalize on that. So
Okay.
I definitely want to change that.
Do you think that that's a systemic issue? Why do you think that people don't know that it exists?
It it is just because of utilization. You know, when you can see the numbers, you can see that, hey, well, we have a large amount of veterans, but not all of them are using it. And we that means that we're not teaching them how. And when we change that, we can start helping more. We have the help. We just need to get to them.
Okay, love that. Is the military doing any type, like you said, outreach and that sort of thing? Are you guys doing any YouTube videos or social media, any of that type of stuff? New age?
There's always careful approaches. I can't speak for the organizations as a whole.
Okay.
There's careful approaches to all things, and we have to do that in in a careful way. But I think that the government is doing a great job at they're trying to get things available to people, and that's at the end of the day, that's a good that's a good thing, man. If as long as they're doing their part, man, I am happy. I'm
Okay.
definitely happy. We're gonna open the doors, no doubt about
Awesome.
that.
All right, cool. So what's next for you? Are you going to stay in this position for a little bit and make a difference?
Man, there are some doors that are swinging open, and I'm gonna be there for the long haul. Honestly, I have a focus on helping as many people as I possibly can, as quickly as I possibly can.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be on the road to the director's chair, hopefully.
Okay, let's go. All right, very cool. So, anything else that you'd like to add before we kind of wrap things up?
No, I mean, I'm Silly Michelle. It was definitely a pleasure, a great experience, and I hope for anyone out there listening that, hey, man, you can achieve whatever goals you want to achieve, man. It's all in that mindset. Just never stop, never stop.
Awesome, love that. And then I will probably ask you for some references if you have anything that you'd like to share, websites, books, anything like that. And then how can people get a hold of you if they'd like to learn a little bit more?
Well, they can definitely hit me on. They can definitely hit me up on Instagram. I'm at FCTHE3RD.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Of course. We'll talk soon.